Welcome to Global Mind Library. Today we're embarking on, well, a really quite inspirational and, I think, exceptionally practical mission. We're doing a deep dive into what you might call the blueprint for sustained achievement.
That's right. We're drawing from a body of work that doesn't just hint at success. It promises, well, maybe not a shortcut in the usual sense, but a clearer path to unleashing your full potential.
Yeah, exactly. It's about conquering adversity, setting those really high goals, and actually achieving them. Our goal here, our mission, is to pull out the practical, actionable wisdom from this source material.
And importantly, not just as philosophy, right?
No, not theory.
Yeah.
We want to shape it into a roadmap, something robust that you can use for a massive, sustained transformation, both personally and professionally.
And the source material itself is quite powerful because it really does bridge spiritual insight with this universal pragmatism. We're focusing today on the wisdom distilled by Maulana Wahiduddin Khan.
A fascinating thing.
Absolutely. A highly respected Islamic scholar, incredibly prolific, wrote over 200 books apparently, and also a renowned peace activist.
So a broad base of experience there.
Very broad. And his work really centers on spiritual understanding, but also promoting a culture of peace, importantly, through nonviolent approaches. What makes his guide, The Secret of Success, so compelling, I think, is that it's not purely theological.
Right. It's not confined to one belief system.
Not at all. It's an extraction of universal truths, but derived from real-world experiences. It clearly illustrates how genuine achievement is, well, it's just inexorably linked to meticulous character development and maybe, above all, unwavering perseverance.
And the core assertion here is, it's pretty profound. It suggests that inside every single one of us, there are these vast, latent potentialities, huge inner reserves of energy, the stuff of greatness, really.
But there's a catch, isn't there?
There is, and it's critical. These inner resources, they're typically dormant, asleep, you might say. They only fully reveal themselves, fully wake up the moment you experience a massive shock. It's a severe hurdle, yeah, or a challenge that fundamentally threatens your current reality, your status quo.
So comfort doesn't really activate it.
Apparently not. The goal, therefore, isn't to retreat when things get tough. The author insists that instead of becoming, and I quote, dejected and dispirited, you absolutely must pause. You need to reflect deeply.
And then act.
And then actively seek creative ways to mobilize those inner reserves, to actually put them to effective use.
Yeah.
It's an active response, not a passive one.
It forces a complete cognitive shift, doesn't it? It
Yeah.
moves your focus entirely away from the external circumstances that feel like they're crushing you. You know, the debt, the failure, the prejudice, whatever it is,
Right, the problem.
to the internal mobilization required to overcome them. The source material strongly suggests, almost provocatively, that if you haven't faced a true existential challenge, you probably haven't even met the person you're truly capable of becoming.
Wow. It's a heavy thought.
It is. Adversity, in this view, is the necessary pressure required to reveal the diamond within. It was always there, but it needed that squeeze.
Okay, so we have to ask then, what is this fundamental secret of success? And why on earth does this guide suggest, so counterintuitively, that hardship isn't just some nuisance to be avoided, but an absolute prerequisite for unlocking the greatest versions of ourselves?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It really is. Okay, let's really unpack this crucial connection. Let's jump right into what the text calls the alchemy of adversity, turning those bad breaks, those minuses, into genuine, sustainable breakthroughs.
It really is about alchemy. The ability to manage, and more importantly, utilize adversity is presented as, quite simply, the human superpower.
A superpower. Interesting way to put it.
Well, think about the celebrated psychologist Alfred Adler. After decades studying human motivation, resilience, he was unambiguous. He declared one of the truly wonder-filled characteristics of human beings is precisely this: their power to turn a minus into a plus.
Turn a minus into a plus. It sounds simple, but
It's far more than just, enforced optimism or putting on a brave face. It's described as this deep-seated capacity, biological, psychological, to actually locate a bright side, even when you're surrounded by overwhelming darkness.
Finding the light.
Okay, and crucially, consciously converting those unfavorable negative situations into profoundly favorable and, importantly, constructive ones. It's an active conversion process.
I find it absolutely fascinating how this principle seems to scale up. It's not just about individuals, is it? The material notes it applies to entire populations, even nations.
Absolutely. The example given is quite stark. Imagine two nations competing. One gets left behind. It faces the minus, maybe economically, technologically, whatever.
Okay, so one's ahead, one's behind.
Right. Now, a new And often explosive dynamic starts. The highly developed nation, the one that's achieved comfort, often slips into this lavish, overly luxurious lifestyle. Complacency sets in. It leads to a kind of internal softness, a lack of drive.
They lose their edge.
Precisely.
Yeah.
But the nation facing the deficit, the deprivation, they develop something else entirely. An explosive passion for hard work and struggle. Necessity becomes the mother of invention and effort.
Because they have to catch up.
Exactly. They are forced, literally forced, to compensate for their deprivation with intense, innovative enterprise. This struggle isn't seen as just a hardship. It becomes the crucible that forges their competitive advantage.
It actually makes them stronger in the long run.
That's the argument. It sets the stage for potentially exponential long-term success. It strongly suggests that stagnation often comes from comfort, whereas real innovation, real progress, almost always comes from necessity. You have to need it.
That necessity, it seems to reveal something really fundamental about, well, the universe, doesn't it? It points towards this unstoppable life force that's just inherent in all living things.
Yes, and the analogy used for this is incredibly powerful. It's the story of the creeper plant.
Ah, yes, the plant. Tell us about that.
So this was a small, quite tender plant. During some house repairs, it was subjected to, well, significant violence. Its roots were completely pulled out.
Oh, dear.
And then to add insult to injury, the entire courtyard where it grew was heavily cemented over, thick concrete. The owner quite logically concluded, well, that's it. The life force must be extinguished. The plant was, for all intents and purposes, dead and buried.
Makes sense. Cement over the roots, pull it out. Sounds pretty final.
It does. But here's where the mystery, the sheer power of life, truly asserts itself. Weeks later, the owner notices something strange. The bricks in that newly cemented courtyard. They began to heave upwards, to crack.
The cement was breaking from below.
Exactly. The creeper's life force, that utterly mysterious phenomena we simply call life, had somehow summoned the strength from its buried, damaged roots to crack through thick cement, to push its way past heavy bricks, all just to find a little bit of sunlight.
That's incredible. Just determination, pure and simple.
Pure, raw power. The owner, witnessing this, apparently deeply regretted even trying to kill it. He realized he was up against something far more fundamental than he understood.
This illustrates, what's the core takeaway here for us?
It illustrates a profound, actionable truth. Life is this astonishing, continuous process. It's a force, even when it's uprooted, buried under concrete, seemingly dormant and defeated. That energy, that drive, continues to exist.
It doesn't just disappear.
No. And it reappears, it reasserts itself the very moment it finds even the slightest opportunity. It completely defies any logical conclusion that hope is lost or that the end has arrived.
That's a powerful metaphor for our own internal lives, isn't it? How often do we conclude, okay, I'm beaten or I'm finished after a big setback?
All the time. We write ourselves off. But this suggests that the core energy, the ambition, the drive, the sheer will to live and achieve it remains. It's still there, under the surface.
So pressure in this context. It's not the enemy.
It's simply the engine of revelation. Adversity doesn't magically create greatness out of nothing. It acts as the external force that compels the hidden potential already within you to burst out into the open.
Potential that comfort would have just left sleeping.
Exactly. Comfort keeps it sluggish, undiscovered. Pressure forces it out. It demands you become more than you were.
And history is just full of stunning proofs of this kind of alchemy, isn't it? Let's consider the story of Sir Walter Scott.
A perfect example. Until he was well into middle age, maybe approaching it, he was regarded by many as, well, frankly, a third-rate poet. Talented, maybe, but not exceptional. And he was a local lawyer. Comfortable, perhaps, but not setting the world on fire.
Okay, so a respectable but unremarkable life.
Pretty much. Then disaster struck. Due to some unfortunate business ventures he was involved in, he was suddenly absolutely overwhelmed by an immense crippling debt. We're talking about a sum that would seem like total financial ruin, something that would destroy his life and reputation.
The ultimate minus.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But that stringency, that immense suffocating pressure, far from crushing him, it became the catalyst. It forced him to change.
How so?
It unleashed what the text vividly calls new and unsuspected forces within him. He desperately needed income, serious income, fast. This drove him away from his comfortable, perhaps less demanding poetry.
Which probably didn't pay much anyway.
Likely not. And it pushed him toward the potentially lucrative field of historical romance novels. This desperate need to write, and importantly to sell books quickly, spurred him to a level of diligence he'd never shown before.
He had to produce.
Tremendous diligence. Reports say he often read thousands upon thousands of words a day, day after day. This intense, necessary effort led to phenomenal literary success on an international scale.
And the debt.
He eventually paid it all off through his writing. He earned a knighthood, became a literary giant. But the point is, without that crushing debt, that initial catastrophe, he might very well have just lived out a comfortable, respectable, but ultimately mediocre life. The pressure forged the legend.
It makes you wonder what untapped potential lies dormant in all of us, just waiting for the right kind of pressure.
It really does. Or take the almost unbelievable early life of Albert Einstein. He's become this icon of born genius.
For the ultimate example, yeah, EMC squared, it just came to him.
Well, the reality was very different. He struggled significantly in childhood. Apparently, he couldn't speak fluently until he was about 3 years old.
Really? Einstein?
Yes, and he performed so poorly in his early schooling that he was eventually expelled. Not because he was disruptive, but because one teacher literally worried his academic failures would negatively influence the other students. Drag them down.
Expelled for being a bad influence academically. That's harsh.
Incredibly harsh. And he was infamously described by one of his educators as, and this is a direct quote, a lazy dog.
Wow.
And it didn't stop there. He even failed his entrance exam to the prestigious Zurich Polytechnic School on his first attempt.
This is Einstein we're talking about. Failed exams, expelled.
The very same. His eventual monumental rise proves that just having intellectual brilliance isn't enough. It was what the source calls the whiplash of adversity, the constant stream of setbacks, the dismissal from others, the internal struggle to understand things his own way that drove him.
So the failures fueled him.
They forced him into focused, purposeful action. The initial setbacks, the judgments, they compelled him to develop the tenacity, the resilience, the unique critical thinking skills that a more comfortable, successful early path might have rendered unnecessary.
Yeah.
His failures literally called forth his hidden potential. It wasn't innate genius alone. It was forged in struggle.
This principle, then, this handicap that helps, it can even apply to things we see as deep personality flaws, right? Like intrinsic traits.
Absolutely. Consider Mahatma Gandhi's extreme shyness. This wasn't just a minor inconvenience for him.
No.
Especially early in his legal career, he found this shyness to be a significant, almost crippling annoyance. He described being often completely unable to speak up in meetings. Sometimes he couldn't even read his own prepared notes aloud in a courtroom. He would freeze up.
That must have been incredibly frustrating for a lawyer.
Immensely. But here's the key. He didn't just lament it or wish it away. He reflected on it. He analyzed it. And he consciously decided to convert it into an asset.
Convert shyness into an asset. How?
His shyness forced him to restrain his thoughts. He couldn't just blurt things out. He had to think carefully before speaking, if he could speak at all. It prevented him from engaging in the often unnecessary verbosity, the endless arguments common among lawyers.
So it made him more concise.
Exactly. It taught him, as he himself said, the economy of words. This enforced discipline, born from his shyness, led him to form the habit of meticulously restraining and measuring his thoughts. The result: the incredibly concise, thoughtful, and powerfully terse speeches he eventually became world-renowned for.
He turned a communication weakness into a unique rhetorical strength.
Precisely. He transformed a natural weakness, something most would see as purely negative, into a defining characteristic of his power and influence. The lesson for us, for you listening, is perhaps to look at our own perceived handicaps.
The things we don't like about ourselves.
Yeah, the awkwardness, maybe the impatience, perhaps a tendency to over-prepare or overthink, and ask ourselves, how can this minus, this thing I struggle with, be consciously channeled or reframed into a strategic plus? How can my weakness become my unique strength?
Okay, so we've established this incredible power of internal mobilization, turning negatives into positives. But now the material seems to shift gears quite significantly, doesn't it? It offers a really serious warning.
It does. A very strong caution against perhaps the most common mistake made by people aspiring to achieve great things.
Which is?
The constant, almost obsessive seeking of the shortcut. The quick fix. The hack. The desire for instant results. We see that everywhere today. Everywhere. And the sources warn quite sternly that the law of nature is absolute on this point. Fruitful, enduring results come only from arduous, painstaking processes. There are no real shortcuts in development.
Nature takes its time.
Precisely. The world isn't like a modern computer where you can just press a button, run a program, and instantly realize decades of desires or ambitions. You absolutely must adjust your expectations to align with reality's pace.
And there's a classic illustration of this, isn't there? The story about the Oxford lawn.
Yes, the famous reply from the Oxford College gardener to the visiting wealthy American millionaire. This millionaire was apparently very impressed by the university's perfectly lush, impossibly green, ancient-looking lawn.
Like a perfect carpet.
Exactly. And he wanted to replicate it instantly back home on his estate. He assumed, naturally perhaps for him, that money could achieve this quickly. He asked the gardener how it was done.
Ready to write a check, probably.
You can imagine. He was ready to spend any amount needed. But the gardener, completely unfazed by the wealth, calmly explained the process. He said, first, you must level the ground perfectly. Then you sow the best grass seed. You let it grow.
Okay, standard gardening so far.
Then, the gardener continued, you start a rigorous, unrelenting regimen. You must cut it regularly, roll it constantly, water it precisely, weed it meticulously, and you repeat this entire process day in, day out, season after season.
For how long?
For 500 years.
500 years.
500 years. The shock value is intended to be absolute, of course. The millionaire quickly learned a crucial lesson. There are things money simply cannot buy instantly. Certain kinds of success, certain qualities of achievement require a fundamental mastery of time, patience, and unwavering consistency.
So the word shortcut.
The force explicitly says the word shortcut really only applies to geography, finding a quicker route between two physical points. It does not apply to the struggles of life, which are fundamentally developmental processes, not instantaneous events. You can't shortcut growth.
And trying to do so is actually dangerous.
Extremely dangerous. Contrast that 500-year perspective with the chilling, almost brutal example the text provides of the foolish youth. This young man was on the second floor of a building and wanted to reach ground level instantly.
I didn't want to take the stairs.
Didn't want to take the stairs. Too slow. He sought the ultimate shortcut. So he jumped out of the second floor window.
Oh, no.
He achieved his goal, reaching ground level instantly. Yes. But in doing so, he condemned himself to instant physical destruction. Broken bones? Maybe worse.
A very vivid image.
It's meant to be. It vividly represents the psychological and practical self-destruction inherent in the relentless, unrealistic quest for immediate success. Whether that's in business, trying to get rich overnight, or in learning, wanting mastery without practice, or in life goals, wanting the result without the journey. Jumping out the window is always destructive.
So if shortcuts are out, what's the alternative? What does the source say about achieving those major feats?
The alternative is embracing the long view. Major feats, whether we're talking about personal mastery, building a lasting business, or undertaking significant national projects, require two things above all: long-term vision and unwavering perseverance. Often, this needs to be sustained across multiple lifetimes.
It's lost generations.
Yes. The source brings up a profound, almost mythical Chinese story, which was apparently popularized by Mao Zedong, illustrating exactly this kind of sustained generational effort.
What's the story?
It's quite simple, really. There was an old man, often called the foolish old man initially, who lived with his young sons. Their house faced two massive mountains that blocked the sunlight and made travel difficult.
Okay, a significant obstacle.
A huge obstacle. One day, the old man declared that they would remove these mountains. They would start digging them out bit by bit.
Dig out two mountains with shovels.
Exactly. A seemingly impossible task. A cynical, supposedly wise neighbor came by and mocked the plan as utterly foolish. He pointed out the sheer scale of the mountains compared to the short mortal lives of the old man and his family. It was absurd.
Logically, the neighbor had a point.
Logically, yes. But the old man's reply contained the logic of eternity, of unwavering purpose. He said something like, "When I die, my sons will continue to dig. And after their death, their sons will continue the work, and their sons after them."
So a multi-generational plan.
Yes. And here's the crucial insight. The mountains, being inanimate rock, will not increase in size. They cannot grow. But the family's digging, if it remains consistent, if the resolve is passed down relentlessly across generations, is absolutely bound to reduce the mountains bit by bit until eventually, inevitably, they are conquered and leveled.
Wow, that's a powerful commitment.
It's a statement about the power of sustained, constructive effort over time. For people or organizations or nations who have the sheer fortitude, the vision, the patience to sustain a constructive scheme across generations, whether that's building a truly great company, pursuing a monumental scientific breakthrough, or achieving social change, No mountain on earth, no obstacle is truly unconquerable in the long run. Time and persistence wear down everything.
And this philosophy, it's not just a fairy tale or ancient wisdom, is it? It seems to be the reality behind a lot of modern industrial success, too.
Absolutely. The source material specifically references the story of a beedi factory owner. Beedis are traditional Indian cigarettes.
Mm.
This owner achieved monumental success, built a huge enterprise from scratch.
Okay. And when asked for his secret?
When asked for his secret, perhaps expecting some clever trick or lucky break, he explained it very simply. It wasn't a sudden event. It was, in his words, a 15-year struggle.
15.
15 years. And he concluded, quite realistically based on his own hard-won experience, that every piece of genuinely worthwhile work, every significant achievement, is essentially accomplished in 15 years.
Now, that 15 years, it's not a literal number you just wait out, is it?
No, not at all. We need to analyze that phrase. 15 years isn't a magic number. It's a metaphor. It represents the substantial, extended period of time required to genuinely master an industry or a complex endeavor.
What does that mastery involve?
It involves everything.
Mhm.
Understanding the intricate details of the supply chain, learning how to navigate unpredictable market cycles, building unshakable customer trust and loyalty over time, developing mature, experienced leadership within the organization.
Mhm.
All the deep foundational stuff
Things that simply cannot be rushed.
cannot be rushed. So those seeking instant success, perhaps particularly in fields like modern tech, where the illusion of overnight fortunes is strong, they are often, according to this perspective, living in a kind of fool's paradise. Reality demands that sustained, foundational effort, that 15-year struggle, must be the recipe for any truly lasting achievement.
It's about building something solid, not just flashy.
Precisely. And we see this kind of perseverance, perhaps in its purest, most silent form, in another anecdote the source provides. The story of the sparrows.
Ah, the birds. What did they teach?
This involves a man who repeatedly destroyed a nest that a pair of sparrows kept trying to build under the roof of his house. He just didn't want it there.
Okay, so he kept knocking it down.
Day after day. But the sparrows, their reaction was remarkable. For over a month, every single day, they would simply return. Silently, incessantly, they would pick up fresh straws, gather new materials, and immediately start fixing the damage, rebuilding the nest from scratch if necessary.
They didn't fight back or give up.
Neither. They wasted zero time or energy lamenting their loss. They didn't try to seek vengeance on the man. They didn't appear to feel defeated or discouraged. They just got back to work.
Focused purely on the task.
They simply continued the constructive activity. That was their sole focus. Eventually, the man, realizing his resistance was essentially futile against their sheer consistency, and frankly feeling exhausted by their relentless, quiet determination, he finally gave up. He let them build the nest.
The sparrows won through sheer persistence.
Silent, relentless perseverance in constructive activity. It ultimately leads to victory, even against what appears to be superior, destructive strength. It teaches us a vital lesson. Momentum is built not by shouting about failure or complaining about obstacles, but by quietly, consistently getting back to the work that needs doing. Just keep rebuilding.
That kind of persistence is amazing. But the source also suggests it's not enough on its own, right? Persistence without direction or readiness. That can be futile, too.
Absolutely crucial point. Such persistence, however admirable, is essentially useless, perhaps even counterproductive, without complete, meticulous readiness. Success demands preparation, meticulous step-by-step preparation.
Like climbing a ladder.
Exactly the analogy used. The text states clearly, success is like climbing a ladder, not taking a lift or an elevator. You absolutely must progress sequentially. You have to ensure each rung, each step, the foundation beneath you, is solid and secure before you even attempt to reach for the next one.
No skipping steps.
No skipping steps allowed if you want to reach the top safely and sustainably.
And the ultimate high-stakes example of this kind of obsessive readiness, it has to be the moon mission, right?
Without a doubt, the Apollo moon mission. We all remember Neil Armstrong's incredibly famous words delivered as he stepped onto the lunar surface. That's one small step for a man, one giant leap for mankind.
Iconic moment. Chills just thinking about it.
It is, but that one single small step was preceded by years upon years of the most highly elaborate, obsessive, meticulous preparations imaginable.
What did that involve?
Well, first, Armstrong and his colleagues were selected from an already elite pool of the world's top test pilots and astronauts, the best of the best. Then, they underwent the most rigorous, grueling training regimes ever devised.
Like what kind of training?
Things like long periods of immersion in deep water tanks to simulate the feeling of weightlessness. Intense courses in celestial navigation, advanced astronomy, rocket physics, geology. They had to become experts in dozens of fields.
They had to be ready for anything.
Literally, they prepared for every conceivable contingency, every possible failure mode, for years. That giant inspirational leap for mankind was only possible because of that initial, often mundane, incredibly detailed, step-by-step readiness on the ground. The glory followed the grind.
It puts that small step into a very different perspective.
It really does. Now contrast that massive, state-funded effort with the highly specialized individual work of the tailor mentioned in the sources. A different scale, but the same principle applies.
But Taylor, tell me about him.
This was a tailor who achieved remarkable success in his craft. He was known for creating garments with absolutely impeccable fittings, perfect every time.
A master craftsman.
Yes. But how did he get there? He revealed that during his apprenticeship, he spent 5 long years just learning the basic art of cutting fabric correctly and sewing seams properly. 5 years on the fundamentals.
That's a long apprenticeship just for the basics.
It is, but here's the crucial part. Even that wasn't enough for true mastery. When he finally opened his own shop, he quickly realized he still couldn't guarantee those perfect fittings for every single client.
Why not? He knew how to cut and sew.
Because he hadn't accounted sufficiently for the almost infinite unique variations in human body shapes and sizes. Standard patterns weren't enough for perfection.
Ah, the human element.
Exactly. So what did he do? He didn't just focus on getting more customers or expanding his business. Instead, he devoted many more years after his initial 5-year apprenticeship to intense, focused study.
Studying what? More sewing technique?
No, studying human anatomy.
Anatomy. For tailoring.
Yes. He realized he had to master the why, the underlying structure of the human body, the way muscles curve, bones connect, posture varies, not just how the mere motion of the scissors and needle. Only by understanding the anatomy could he achieve consistently perfect fittings for every unique individual.
Wow. That's dedication to the craft.
It's profound dedication. Progress, true mastery is always step by step. You build foundational knowledge first. The lesson, perhaps for the modern listener, for you is, are you currently focused only on the quick fix, the surface technique, the cut and sew of your field? Or are you willing to invest the time, the 15 years, to truly master the foundational anatomy of your craft before seeking genuine, lasting mastery and success?
That's a challenging question. Okay, so we've covered turning adversity into fuel, the necessity of long-term vision and patience, and the absolute requirement for meticulous preparation. Now let's move into the dynamics of action itself. How does the source advise we engage with the world, especially when facing conflict or intense competition?
The counsel here is very clear and, again, perhaps counterintuitive, in a world that often glorifies confrontation. The advice is, intelligence must always, always supersede brute confrontational strength. We are explicitly cautioned that direct, forceful confrontation seldom brings us anything positive.
So charging headfirst into battle isn't usually the best strategy.
Rarely, according to this wisdom. There's a very memorable lesson embedded in the strategy called ducking below the waves.
Ducking below the waves. Explain that.
Imagine 2 excellent swimmers suddenly caught offshore in a massive, violent typhoon. The sea is churning, waves are enormous, the wind is howling, chaos.
Terrifying situation.
Absolutely. One swimmer tries the heroic approach. He decides to battle the immense waves head-on, fighting with all his strength at the turbulent surface. He tries to power through them.
What happens to him?
He drowns. Quickly. The forces are simply too overwhelming.
Okay. And the other swimmer?
The other swimmer is strategically intelligent. He doesn't try to fight the surface power. He realizes, perhaps remembers, that the wave's destructive force is significantly less underneath the churning surface. Down deep, the water is calmer.
Ah, go under the chaos.
Precisely. He takes a deep breath, plunges deep below the turbulence, conserves his energy, and swims for his life beneath the main force of the storm, eventually reaching safety. He survived not through brute strength, but through intelligent adaptation.
So applying that to life.
In life, when a sudden typhoon approaches, maybe a sudden market collapse, intense personal criticism online, unexpected political opposition, a family crisis, we need to be flexible and intelligent enough to change tactics. Don't just reactively fight the surface chaos.
What should we do instead?
We need to find the point of least resistance. Sometimes that means plunging deep, perhaps withdrawing temporarily, focusing on quiet preparation, gathering resources, planning the next move, and swimming towards safety beneath the immediate turmoil, rather than trying to heroically and perhaps foolishly battle insurmountable external forces right there on the surface where they're strongest.
Know when to fight and know when to dive deep.
Exactly. And if you must engage an opponent or tackle a major challenge directly, then preparation isn't just advisable, it's absolutely mandatory.
This goes back to the readiness point.
It does, but with a specific focus on conflict. The analogy used here is stark, even disturbing. The analogy of the wounded big cat.
How does that go?
Imagine a poacher in the jungle. He takes a shot at a big cat, a tiger, a leopard, but only wounds it. He doesn't kill it cleanly.
Okay, a dangerous mistake.
A fatal mistake, potentially. That cat, now desperate, in pain, wounded, and enraged. It often turns into a man-eater. It becomes far more dangerous, far more aggressive than it was before it was wounded. Ill-prepared, incomplete action is highly counterproductive when dealing with powerful forces.
So the lesson is?
Wounding an enemy, and this could be metaphorical, like launching a half-baked product against a giant corporation, or making a public accusation without absolutely undeniable evidence, or starting a fight you don't know how to finish without the resources and plan for proper follow-through, only serves to turn them into a greater, more motivated, and ultimately more dangerous opponent.
You've essentially poked the bear and made it angry.
Exactly. You've created a bigger problem for yourself. The core wisdom is brutally simple. Ill-prepared actions and ill-founded complaints are utterly worthless and often harmful. You must prepare either for complete victory, achieving your objective decisively, or for a strategic, controlled retreat. Anything in the middle, any half measure, is hazardous. Don't start something you can't finish properly.
We see the absolute pinnacle of applying intelligent composure, strategic thinking, and perhaps moral authority over brute force in the story of Napoleon, don't we?
Yes, the incident after his escape from Elba is legendary in this context.
Yeah.
He landed back in France with a tiny force and found himself marching towards Grenoble, where a force of 20,000 royalist soldiers, loyal to the king, were sent specifically to stop him. Arrest him, maybe kill him.
20,000 against his small band. He was massively outmatched militarily.
Hopelessly outmatched. He knew a direct fight was absolute suicide. There was no way he could win conventionally.
So what did he do? Did he retreat?
No. He did something completely unexpected. He avoided the direct military fight entirely. He ordered his small group of guards to halt, and he advanced completely alone on foot towards the enemy line. Calmly, unarmed.
Alone, towards 20,000 armed soldiers.
Yes. And as he got within pistol range, he performed a stunning act of pure psychological and moral theater. He dramatically unbuttoned his coat, baring his chest completely, and shouted to the front line of soldiers aiming their muskets at him, "Soldiers, which one of you is willing to fire at the naked chest of his emperor?"
Wow.
What happened? Silence. Then, reportedly, a cry went up, "Vive l'empereur!" Long live the emperor. That simple, incredibly brave act completely bypassed the formal military chain of command. It appealed directly to a deeper psychological loyalty, to their past service under him, to his legendary status, his composure, his strategic vulnerability, his moral authority in that moment. It turned almost all 20,000 opponents to his side without a single shot being fired. They joined him.
That's the power of strategic thinking over brute force. Astounding.
It's the ultimate example of understanding psychology, timing, and using moral capital instead of just military might. Preparation here wasn't just about guns, it was about understanding his audience.
That ability to step forward, to use moral authority, even vulnerability strategically, it leads us directly into what the source says about the critical dynamics of personal success, doesn't it? Particularly around humility.
Yes, humility and the absolutely ruthless acknowledgement of reality. This is a cornerstone.
Ruthless acknowledgement.
The source material is incredibly clear and quite blunt on this. Nothing, absolutely nothing, is more distinctive in this world of practical realities than false pride. Ego getting in the way of truth.
Why is it so distractive?
Because the very first step, the essential prerequisite toward achieving any meaningful success or initiating any kind of genuine reform, whether that's personal self-improvement, fixing problems in an organization, or addressing issues in society, is the courageous admission of one's own faults, shortcomings, and mistakes.
You have to own your part first.
You have to. This story used to illustrate this is perfect.
The young footballer.
After his team suffered a crushing defeat in a major match, he wrote a letter to his father. Instead of making excuses, blaming the referees, the weather, or his teammates, which is so common.
Oh, yeah, the blame game.
Instead of that, He wrote with profound, almost brutal honesty. Our opponents had discovered a great gap in our defense line, and that gap,
Well, Dad, that was me.
wow, taking full responsibility. Full responsibility. And that admission, the source argues, is an act of liberation. It's the starting point for improvement. If you fail to admit your mistakes, if your pride won't let you,
What happens then?
you are psychologically compelled to cover them up. You have to create justifications, spin narratives. This inevitably leads down a destructive path, a cascade of perhaps small lies, then bigger ones, developing false arguments, building resentment, and ultimately projecting blame onto others. You create a false reality.
And this can ruin lives.
Absolutely. The case of the man mentioned who inherited only the feeling of wealth is a tragic illustration. He grew up rich, expected to inherit a fortune, but due to circumstances, he inherited almost nothing. Just the memory and the feeling of being wealthy.
Okay, so a drastic change in circumstances.
Drastic. But his false pride, his inability to accept his new reality, prevented him from adapting. He couldn't bring himself to take a lower status job that was available. He wouldn't consider retraining or continuing his education in a different field. He couldn't adjust his lifestyle.
He was trapped by his image of himself.
Completely trapped by ego. This rigidity, this refusal to acknowledge reality, led him to blame his relatives for his situation, accusing them of cheating him. His resentment festered, leading to quarrels, isolation, and eventually, the text suggests, contributing to chronic illness likely brought on by the stress and bitterness. His false pride destroyed his chances for recovery and happiness.
So acknowledging reality, admitting fault, it's not cowardice.
It's the fundamental act of bravery required to initiate any meaningful reform or progress. Furthermore, alongside this self-awareness, we must cultivate the wisdom to understand what remains unspoken.
The language of silence.
Exactly. Not everything important can or even should be made explicit, especially in complex situations or relationships.
Why not? Shouldn't we aim for clarity?
Sometimes, yes. But the source suggests the truly successful person is often fortunate enough to have colleagues, partners, or advisors who know the language of silence. People who can read between the lines.
Intuition.
Intuition, yes, but also deep understanding and trust. People who grasp the underlying intent, who can fill in the unsaid gaps based on context and shared understanding. Think of that famous, almost legendary one-word telegram.
Which one is that?
Sent by the British general Sir Charles Napier after he conquered the region of Sindh and what's now Pakistan, possibly against orders. He needed to report his success, but perhaps also acknowledge his transgression. He sent a single Latin word, peccavi.
Peccavi, what does that mean?
Literally, it means I is sin.
So, an admission of wrongdoing.
Yes, but here's the brilliance. When spoken aloud in English, peccavi sounds exactly like I have sinned.
Ah, a pun. I have sinned. I have sinned.
Precisely. The Governor-General back in headquarters instantly understood the double meaning. He understood the military victory and the political nuance conveyed in that single, incredibly clever, unspoken yet spoken word.
That speaks volumes about the need for shared context and intuition.
It really does. It highlights the absolutely indispensable role of intuition, trust, deep context, and understanding the unmeasured, unspoken parts of reality, especially in high-stakes environments like politics, business negotiations, or even close personal relationships. Sometimes what isn't said is more important than what is.
Fascinating. Okay, moving towards the foundations of interaction. The source talks about a core principle governing success in relationships and business.
Yes, it emphasizes profoundly the principle of reciprocity, but perhaps not in the way we usually think of it, like simple tit for tat. It frames it almost as a universal law. One who gives is the one who receives. The emphasis is on the giving first, and perhaps selflessly.
Giving leads to receiving.
That's the idea. Every truly successful, sustainable entity in the universe seems to follow this pattern, according to the text. Look at the sheer dedication of a tree, the example given.
How is a tree an example?
Well, a tree receives sustenance, yes, water from the earth, light from the sun, but its entire existence, its entire being, seems reserved for the service of others.
Oh.
It provides cooling shade without asking for anything. It offers its wood for shelter or fire. It produces beautiful flowers, perhaps just for joy. And it bears fruit for nourishment. It gives and gives and gives, holding nothing back until the day it dies. Its receiving enables its massive giving.
That's a beautiful way to look at it. And in the human world,
The Beta Shoe Company is cited as a business example. It grew from a small Czech firm into one of the largest shoe manufacturers globally. Their success, the source suggests, was attributed directly to their core philosophy. fulfilling the actual essential needs of their customers for affordable, durable footwear, and genuinely looking after their customers' interests better than perhaps anyone else in the market at the time,
So focusing on customer needs, on giving value?
led directly to receiving unprecedented growth and customer loyalty. In genuinely selfless giving, providing real value, they received success.
This ethical framework seems critical, especially in business, where the temptation might be to take more than give.
Absolutely critical for long-term success. The source details the business secret of a particularly successful restaurant owner. People wondered how he kept his prices so reasonable while maintaining quality.
What was his secret? Exploiting workers, cutting corners.
No, he revealed, quite profoundly, that he makes his gain from the market and not from the customer.
From the market, not the customer. What does that mean?
It means he doesn't try to exploit his customers by charging the absolute maximum price the market will bear for average or mediocre food. That's taking from the customer. Instead, he focuses his diligence, his hard work, on his preparations.
How so?
By meticulously managing his supply chain, buying his ingredients in bulk at the lowest possible wholesale price, negotiating hard in the market, finding efficiencies, cutting his internal costs through smart management, reducing waste. His effort goes into cost control before the customer even walks in.
Ah, so he saves money on the input side.
Exactly. By buying low and running a lean, efficient operation through his own hard work and planning, he can then afford to sell high-quality food reasonably and ethically to his customers.
So success comes from?
Not from exploiting the customer that only brings short-term gain and eventual resentment. Real, sustainable success comes from diligence and preparation, buying low, managing efficiently, and ethical conduct in the transaction, selling affordably and consistently, providing genuine value. That's how you build long-term loyalty and a truly successful, sustainable business. Give value, manage costs, and the profits will follow.
That makes perfect sense. Okay, so we have adversity as fuel, patience, preparation, ethical action. But what drives all of this? What keeps someone on that long, difficult path?
To effectively channel all that harnessed energy, all that diligence, that ethical perseverance, you absolutely need something else. A profound, non-negotiable driving purpose.
A why?
A huge why. The text describes a life lived with clear purpose using a powerful image. It's like an express train tearing down the tracks toward its final destination.
An express train, how so?
Think about it. As the express train speeds along, the continuous spectacle of the countryside flashes by the windows. Beautiful fields, scenic villages, winding streams, maybe interesting towns, all sorts of potential distractions.
Right, things to look at.
But the express train shows zero interest in any of them. It doesn't slow down to admire the view. It doesn't make unscheduled stops at charming villages. It stops nowhere short of its designated goal. Its focus is absolute.
So a person with purpose.
A person with a definite, burning purpose gives that purpose their full and undivided attention. They waste no time, no energy, no precious resources on peripheral, fleeting attractions or diversions, no matter how appealing they might seem in the moment. Their eyes are fixed on the destination.
You become like that traveler the text mentioned.
Exactly, like the traveler who only sees the goal far ahead and literally has no time or inclination to rest in luxurious roadside shade or admire the splendid mansions along the route. Those things are irrelevant to the mission.
Your purpose has to permeate everything.
It must. It needs to run through your body like blood through your veins, informing every decision, every action. And it's this total absorption, this complete dedication, that often leads to those sudden, instantaneous-seeming breakthroughs that look like magic or genius to outsiders.
But it's not magic, is it? It's the result of that intense focus.
Precisely. Take the famous, almost apocryphal story of Elias Howe's invention of the modern sewing machine.
What was his struggle?
For years, he struggled desperately with one key problem: where to put the eye of the needle. All existing needles for hand sewing had the eye at the base, the blunt end. He couldn't get a machine to work reliably with that configuration. The solution completely evaded his conscious, rational efforts.
He was stuck on the old model.
Completely stuck. The breakthrough only came, the story goes, after years of total preoccupation with this single problem. It came in a vivid, intense dream.
A dream solved it.
He dreamt he was captured by a tribe of hostile warriors who were threatening him with spears. As they danced around him, menacingly pointing their spears, he suddenly noticed something crucial. The spears had eye-shaped holes near the tip, near the sharp point.
An eyelet at the tip.
Exactly. He woke up with a start. The image burned into his mind. He immediately realized the solution. The eyelet for the thread had to be at the tip of the sewing machine needle, not the base. He rushed to his workshop, modified a needle, and successfully invented the revolutionary lock-stitch sewing machine that changed the world.
Wow. So the subconscious mind took over.
The source argues that true, deep success, those kinds of breakthroughs, often come only after complete involvement. A level of focus where the goal, the problem, becomes so integral to your being that it's absorbed into your subconscious mind, which then works on it even when you're not consciously thinking about it, like in a dream.
That level of commitment changes everything, even your perception of time.
Fundamentally changes it. When you commit entirely to a worthy high goal, your entire relationship with time transforms. Consider the example of Alexander Solzhenitsyn.
The great Russian novelist, Nobel laureate.
Yes. After enduring the Soviet Gulag and becoming a global literary figure, he received an invitation to visit the White House from the President of the United States.
A massive honor. Something most people would jump at.
Absolutely. A symbol of global recognition, a huge photo opportunity, a chance to meet the leader of the free world. Many would sacrifice almost anything for that.
But Solzhenitsyn.
He famously, politely declined the invitation. His reason was simple and profound. He stated, "The lifespan at my disposal does not leave me time for purely ceremonial encounters."
No time for ceremonies, even at the White House.
Even there. When one is truly purposefully driven by a great work, by a mission that consumes them, time itself becomes incredibly precious. It's set at a great, almost infinite value. Every minute counts towards the goal.
And without that purpose.
Without a defined goal, the source suggests, time just hangs heavy. It becomes a burden. One fritters away existence on empty, non-constructive diversions, just trying to kill time because there's nothing more important driving them forward. Purpose gives time its value.
Okay, this framework is powerful: adversity, patience, preparation, ethics, purpose. But life is still full of challenges, pain, setbacks. How does the source suggest we maintain perspective through all that?
This is where the source material offers a broader philosophical or perhaps spiritual lens to help manage life's constant barrage of challenges and inevitable pains. It does this by introducing a perspective rooted in what it calls the creation plan of God.
Okay, now this sounds like it might be moving into specific religious territory. How should we approach this part?
Yes, and it's important, as we're doing here, to impartially report on this aspect of the text's philosophical perspective, without necessarily endorsing it as universal fact, but understanding its role within the source's worldview.
Understood. So what is this creation plan perspective?
The divine scheme, as presented in the source, suggests that this present world, with all its inherent struggles, difficulties, and imperfections, is intentionally designed. It's not the final destination. It's seen as a temporary test period.
A test? For what?
And also a selection ground. The ultimate purpose of this earthly life, in this view, is for God to determine who amongst humanity uses their God-given freedom, particularly the freedom to choose between good and evil, between constructive and destructive paths, between character and comfort in the best possible way.
So life is an evaluation period for a future state.
Essentially, yes. For ultimate eternal success, which this source refers to using the traditional term paradise, this perspective offers a profound way to reframe the difficulties of life.
How does it reframe them?
It doesn't deny the reality of suffering, sorrow, or pain. Those are acknowledged as real. But instead of seeing them as meaningless, random, or purely negative, it reframes them as necessary, temporary components of this pre-death testing phase. They are part of the exam, so to speak.
And the consolation is?
The profound solace offered is that these struggles are temporary. And if one navigates this test successfully by maintaining ethical conduct, by showing perseverance, by choosing the right path despite difficulty, then they will qualify as candidates for the ultimate eternal reward, a state free from suffering. It gives meaning and hope even in the midst of hardship.
And does this belief have practical consequences for life now?
Absolutely. Crucially, this knowledge or belief of constantly being tested, of being accountable for one's choices, instills a powerful internal sense of moral responsibility.
How so?
It acts as a kind of built-in self-correcting mechanism. If you genuinely believe your actions are being observed and judged for an eternal outcome, it provides a very strong incentive to live a disciplined life, to maintain high ethical standards, to avoid harmful actions, and to actively contribute constructively to society now.
So it benefits society in the present, too?
Yes. The pursuit of ultimate eternal success in this framework naturally leads to actions that benefit the individual and the community in this temporary world as well. It aligns personal salvation with social good.
That's a comprehensive worldview. Now, bringing it back to the theme of turning minuses into pluses, the source suggests the ultimate example of this can be seen not just in individuals, but at the national level.
Yes. The text details the profound Japanese experience following the devastation of the Second World War as perhaps the ultimate case study in national resilience and strategic redirection.
The defeat Japan suffered was catastrophic, wasn't it?
The scale is almost unimaginable today. Following the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki in August 1945, the country was utterly shattered physically, economically, and spiritually. Cities leveled, millions dead or homeless, the emperor renouncing divinity, occupied by a foreign power. It was total, absolute defeat.
A minus on an unprecedented scale.
Exactly. Yet what happened next was extraordinary. The Japanese leadership and people made a conscious, strategic decision. They refused to harbor a national grudge. They refused to dedicate their future to seeking revenge against the victors.
That must have been incredibly difficult emotionally.
One can only imagine. But they viewed the past with a kind of clinical, surprising, pragmatic calm. The source suggests their internal conclusion was, essentially, since we initiated hostilities against the U.S. at Pearl Harbor and we have now suffered these devastating bombings in return, effectively, we were quits. The score was settled, tragically, but settled. Time to move on.
A monumental decision, really, to just let it go at a national level.
It was. They understood, apparently, that engaging in prolonged protest, demanding apologies, seeking vengeance, or constantly dwelling on the trauma of the past would simply be a second, potentially fatal mistake. It would drain the national spirit, waste precious energy, and prevent recovery.
So they chose a completely new path.
A completely new direction. They made a national resolution to divert virtually all the remaining energy, their intellectual resources, their societal focus, towards two specific areas: rigorous, high-quality education for their people, and intensive, focused industrial development. Rebuilding, not recriminating.
Education and industry.
That was the new mantra. Their complete focus on patience and perseverance in these constructive fields, coupled with their absolute commitment to avoiding international provocation and further conflict, led to what the world now knows as the Japanese economic miracle.
A phenomenal turnaround.
Decades of astonishingly rapid, high-quality economic growth. The source material accurately and poetically describes them as rising, quote, like the mythical phoenix from its own ashes. They literally turned overwhelming military defeat, the ultimate minus, into an unprecedented economic victory.
A victory that made them arguably far more powerful and influential globally through economics than they had ever been through military means before the war.
Precisely. They didn't just recover, they transformed. They used the absolute zero point of their defeat not as an end, but as a springboard for a completely different and ultimately more successful kind of national greatness. It's a stunning example of turning a minus into a plus on a massive scale.
This national trajectory, this story, it provides a really powerful final caution that the source highlights, doesn't it, against a certain way of thinking.
Yes, against what the text calls the inverted pyramid style of thinking. It's a warning about where we tend to focus our attention.
The inverted pyramid? What does that mean?
It means we are almost pathologically drawn as humans to the spectacular end result. We focus on the front page headline announcing the success. We admire the glittering 21st-story penthouse of the new skyscraper. We marvel at the sudden, magical-seeming breakthrough invention. We see the tip of the pyramid.
We focus on the visible, glorious outcome.
Exactly. But the true master, the deep builder, the person or nation grounded in reality, knows that focusing only on the headline, only on the penthouse, is fundamentally dangerous and misleading. It's looking at the pyramid upside down, balanced precariously on its point.
Why is it dangerous?
Because you completely forget or deliberately ignore the essential, often boring, invisible foundation that supports the spectacular result. You forget the long, slow, step-by-step process that made it possible.
Like the foundations of the skyscraper.
Precisely. You forget the years spent digging deep, laying the massive concrete foundations underground. You forget the painstaking work of reinforcing the structure, floor by meticulous floor, building strength incrementally from the bottom up. That's the stable pyramid, wide base supporting the peak.
So, true nation building or even personal success.
True, lasting nation building, and indeed true, lasting personal success, requires building the base first. It demands focusing on developing individual character, competence, skills, education, ethical grounding, the wide, solid foundation before you ever attempt to celebrate the summit or focus only on the peak achievement. The foundation enables the height.
First things first. build the base.
Always. Otherwise, the structure is unstable and bound to collapse.
Okay, this has been an incredibly rich exploration. We've covered so much ground from adversity to patience, preparation, action, purpose, perspective. So wrapping this all up, what does this really mean for you, the listener, tuning in today?
That's the key question, isn't it?
Our mission in this deep dive was to try and find the secret of success hidden within this material. And what we seem to have found is, well, it's not really a secret in the sense of some hidden magic formula, is it?
Not at all. There's no external magic, no quick fix, no guaranteed instantaneous result promised here. The secret, if you can call it that, seems to lie entirely in mastering the internal process.
The internal process, meaning?
Meaning developing that inner diligence, committing to meticulous planning, cultivating unwavering patience, building resilience, and perhaps most importantly, forging a rock-solid yet adaptable ethical character. The success comes from who you become along the way.
It's about the journey, the building, not just the destination.
Very much so. And the sources drive home a point that might be uncomfortable but is crucial: complaining against others.
Which is so easy to do.
So easy. Lamenting losses, blaming external prejudice or unfairness for your failures. The text suggests that 9 times out of 10, this is merely an expression of one's own internal incapacity, lack of sufficient preparation, or perhaps a lack of will.
Ouch. That's quite direct.
It is. It forces self-reflection. We must try to acknowledge, the source implies, that the response we get from society, from the market, from the world around us,
Right.
it's very often just an echo, a reflection of our own internal condition and our level of genuine preparedness.
So if the world isn't responding the way we want,
The first place to look is inward. Am I truly prepared? Have I done the work? Have I climbed the ladder step by step? The promise is, if you enter the arena of life fully prepared, equipped with the proper skills, a clear strategic vision, unwavering determination, and ethical conduct, then the world, in the long run, simply cannot deny you your due recognition and success. Preparation commands respect.
so ultimately to build that strong nation like Japan did, or to build a successful, purposeful individual life, the text suggests we don't actually need some new complex formula or cutting-edge technique.
Apparently not. What's needed is something much more fundamental, perhaps almost old-fashioned. Simply an awakening of the individual conscience.
The conscience.
Yes. It's stated very plainly, and this is really the thought we want to leave you with today. Without the light of conscience in the individual, no work of any real, lasting value can be done.
Without the light of conscience, no work of value. That's profound.
Think about that deep connection it draws between the micro, the individual's inner moral compass, and the macro, the value of the work produced, the success achieved, the society built.
So the final question for everyone listening is,
What small, fundamental light of conscience may be due? That commitment to honesty, that foundational moral clarity, that internal dedication to excellence over ease, that willingness to admit fault, what spark needs to be switched on or perhaps turned up brighter in your own life starting today.
what's the first step in building that deep internal foundation?
Exactly. What's the first block you need to lay, consciously, to truly begin building the base for your own greatest, perhaps 15-year enduring success?